All right, so this is going to be our little test. This is for painting some Death Guard. So I got some Plague Marines for the Kill Team box here. I've base coated it a black all over, just kind of like just all over to get it a primed and black. I used Vallejo black. The black that you use I don't think really matters. As long as you get decent coverage, I think it should be fine. And yeah, I'm going to start with Warpaint Fanatic's Woodland Camo. We're going with the kind of traditional Death Guard color scheme of this kind of like desaturated greens for the armor panels. And yeah, so I got a little bit of water on my brush. And I got a good chunk of paint here. And what I'm doing is I'm just mixing a little bit of water in this. And you can kind of see how I've got a little bit thinner consistency. And that's okay. That's kind of what we want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to find all the armor panel parts. And I'm going to try to very carefully pick them out. And you know what? I'm going to make a mess here a little bit. You can actually see I've put too much water here. So I'm going to daub my paintbrush on a paper towel. And I'm going to just kind of gently touch it to these armor panels. So I got a little too much water here. That's good. This is showing what you don't want to do. So now I'm going to go back to the paint I got. And I'm going to gently push a little bit into that watered down area. And I think this has got the coverage I actually want. So let's do a little bit of a test. Okay, so yeah, I feel like this is about the consistency we actually want. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to gently put that color everywhere. Specifically everywhere these armor panels are. And I am going to be messy here. And I'm not too worried. One, because Death Guard is kind of an inherently messy looking army. But two, we're going to clean a lot of this up after. So I'm not going to be too precious about it. And for this model, I picked this one intentionally. It's got a cloak, which I find frustrating to paint. And I think ideally what you might want to do is not attach this guy to the base before you paint the cloak. Or, you know, do it in a sub-assembly, have the cloak removed, and then you can paint the back of the Marine a little bit easier. But if I'm being really, truly honest, I oftentimes will just build the model like this, and I leave the cloak, and if I can't reach it with my paintbrush, and it's difficult to see it, chances are no one else is going to see it either. So I don't worry about it too much. I know that that's going to drive some people crazy, but that's just, you know, that's just how I do it. Now, I'm debating on how to paint the little Nurglings we got here. I think I'm just going to leave him black for the time being. I am trying to get between the legs and get some of the little bits that are hidden. But I'm not going to go too wild. Okay, so just kind of gently brushing this on. Every once in a while I'm dipping back in, getting that paint, making sure that that consistency is still the same. You're noticing on the palette I've got over here, which is a little messy, the color is not entirely opaque, which is okay. We're not wanting it to like cover up all the details, and so we kind of want it to be a little lighter. And if we need to do extra coats, we'll do extra coats, and that's okay. You get a smoother finish if you do lighter coats of paint and just do multiple light coats instead of worrying about it getting it in one. Now, every so often, you should probably clean your brush. Just rinse it out a little bit. And your brush is going to be loaded up with water. You want to wick some of that off on your paper towels. And then go back in and let's get a little bit more paint. And yeah, my goal here is, like I said, I'm just going to get this base color down on all of the bits that are going to be green. And so yeah, I'm just going to finish up this helmet. A bunch of the stuff on this helmet is actually probably going to be like a brass or like a copper color, so I'm not too worried. But I'm going to try my best to get everything I think will be green. Okay. Get the back of the pauldrons here. Get the back of his little arm. Get his hand. And we're going to make some stylistic choices with this as well. So I don't know. I think for the backpack, I'm going to largely leave that metallic, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. And for our little Nurglings, I think I want them to be a different color. I want them to be maybe a contrasting color, so we might have them look a little different. Now, that took a couple minutes to do that. And if you look at like where we started here on the leg, like this is already starting to dry. This will dry pretty quickly, and we can get started on the next one in the meantime, waiting for this to dry up. Now, do I have perfect coverage? Nope, I don't. Are we going to worry about it? Nah, we're not. So let's pick up another one of these guys, and we're just going to kind of keep going. Now we got the chunky lad with the big old gun, his little buddy down here. And I'm going to start painting his legs and trying to get this going. Yeah, since these guys are going to be kind of dirty and like we're going to be utilizing a lot of washes, I'm not too concerned about everything being perfect. And also, like, I'm not a competition painter. I'm just some guy, you know? Just some guy who wanted to paint some nasty lads. So let's get over here. We're going to get this shoe painted here. I'm getting it all over the base too while we do this, and that's not going to be a problem because we're going to do the base at the very end. And honestly, that's also going to be a mess, so we can kind of just relax. Don't worry. Paint his butt. Get behind the backpack here. And like for stuff like this, no one's going to see that really, except for you, because you're the only person who's really going to be analyzing these closely if you're just using them to play games. And so don't worry, just put paint on them. Get some paint in here. And there we go. Now I got some texture here I don't like. That might be coming from something on my palette, which, you know, my palette could be cleaner, but it's not. So I'm going to wash my brush again, get some new paint, mix it up with a little bit of that water, try to get a smooth consistency. I'm just spinning the brush a little bit to try to get it to a point. This brush is on its way out a little bit, but you can still use it even if the tip's getting a little curved. You can still use it. Okay. So let's get his head and get his collar. Try to just get a little bit of green on all of this. For the horns and the spiky bits that they have, I think we're going to go with kind of some ochre colors instead of like the bone colors. I like it being a little bit darker, and I like having that kind of orangey yellow kind of tint to it. Kind of like a rotted bone instead of like a pristine, clean bone color. Let's get a little bit on his gloves here. Get a little bit more paint. So yeah, that's all we're doing. We're just getting a little bit of paint, and we're trying to make sure too, like as you go, if you notice that you put the paint a little thick, you can always, you know, clean your brush out with some water. And with that extra water, you can go in there and rub it around on the panel where you've put a little too much, and it'll loosen up that paint, and you can kind of wick it away with and take another dry brush, or, you know, take your existing brush, clean it again, dry it off. And since your brush will be dry, you can have this like capillary action where you're kind of sucking up the extra paint and the extra water that you've added. And that's a useful little trick, because I oftentimes make that mistake, and it's nice to be able to recover from it. I think the biggest thing is just don't panic, have fun with it. You're making little monsters, you know, it's gonna be okay. You're making nasty little men. You can't mess it up too bad. So the sorcerer here, he's got a lot of stuff going on. And with him, it's going to be the same though. We're just going to keep putting this green down. And just get some coverage on it. Again, perfection is for you know, competition painting. And I mean, we want to grow as painters and we want to get better, but you also kind of want to get things finished and get things on the board. And if you're just starting, I think that the best approach is just paint. You know, maybe pay attention to your process, see how you're handling the brushes, see how the paint is responding as you add certain amounts of water. Like these little things that you pay attention to while you're painting, those are the things that help you grow as a painter. And again, I'm not saying that I'm, you know, a professional. I'm not a Golden Demon winner or Crystal Brush or any of those things. I'm just a enthusiastic hobbyist. And, you know, I also strive to get better at painting. And yeah, we just got to be kind to ourselves. Be kind to ourselves and practice. I really love the details on these models. I think even though they've got a lot of fussy details, these are kind of great for a beginner painter, because there's a lot of different techniques you can do to pick these things out easily, like getting really into dry brushing. You know, slap chop is very popular for this, or doing like, you know, like any kind of like zenithal highlight and wash. I'm kind of doing a more traditional, like we're going to layer colors up and try to do it that way. But I think those other techniques are great. Like, genuinely, I use them for some of my armies. And it kind of just depends on what I'm doing. Like, what's my intention when I'm working on a project. Sometimes it's just, I'd like to finish this. Sometimes it's, you know, I want this ready to play a game that I'm scheduling, or, you know, if you are trying to get into, you know, a competition and paint at a higher level, then, you know, that's something else to consider. It's something else to really think about and be intentional in your hobby. And for me, these guys for me are going to be largely, these are playing pieces. I'm not worried about them being perfect. I'm just worried about, let's get them done. And also, I'm doing this to help a friend of mine who is new to the hobby and, you know, wants to learn how to paint. And like I said, I'm not the best painter, but just sometimes getting a little push is all we need. And I think encouraging people to practice, regardless of what your skill level is at the moment, just try it. Is it going to look grody sometimes? Oh yeah. It's going to look grody sometimes, and that's okay. These little wing bits for the like fly wings coming off the backpack, I don't know what color I'm going to paint these yet, but I'm thinking I'm just going to start with them the same color as the armor. And if I change it later, so be it. But for the time being, I'm just going to get some color on them. And got to make sure I get the back of his head and the back of his collar there. And the rest of these elements, like the staff and the flies, I think I'm going to leave those as is. Missed a little bit on the shoes there. And yeah, we'll come back to him in a bit. So yeah. The format I'm doing for this video is kind of a test. I'm not overly concerned with really anything. I'm just kind of doing this for fun. And maybe encourage some people who are a little afraid to get started just to get started. It's okay. Like, look at this. I'm just slapping the paint on. Just slapping the paint on. And like, I'm making sure it's not too thick. We don't want to get any details filled up. So you can see that the paint is still pretty thin, and you can kind of see through it a little bit still, and that's ideal because we don't want to hide the detail. All the gross details we want to be visible. So I'm just going to keep smashing the brush into these different little nooks and crannies. And just, yeah, just get way up in there. And, you know, there's going to be later steps when we're starting to do the layering where we're going to be a little bit more careful. For this step, we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to do our thing. And our thing is getting paint on this model. For the little like waistcoats and tabards with the chainmail and stuff, those we're going to paint over this green for those because we're going to get those in like kind of a variety of metallic colors, I'm sure. So don't worry. If you get green all over them, that's fine. Make sure you don't miss anything. Get your hands and all your little pauldrons covered up here. Get behind the head here. Just going to get a little bit more on this pauldron, a little bit more on his wrists and his hands. Get under the shoulder blade, a little bit of the back. That's good enough. Okay. Get a little more paint. All right, let's do it. Okay, so I came in, it got a little thick here. This is a little thicker than I would like. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of push this around, and I'm going to get into these nooks and crannies with that paint. And I'm actually just going to dip a little bit of water and a little bit on the canvas, not on the canvas, the palette here. Thin it out a little bit and come in here with that slightly watered down mixture and just kind of start brushing over. Because like I said, we don't want to clog up the detail. And I'm going to be real, this stuff looks bad. Like, this doesn't look good. But you need to not be afraid of that. Like, this isn't going to be perfect right away. And if you're starting your painting journey, most likely it's not going to be perfect for a while. And that's okay. Like, I don't think perfection is what you should be aiming for. It should be just kind of, just the practice of it, just the enjoyment of it. And as you get started, you know, you'll get a little bit more comfortable. And it'll be a little bit easier to kind of push forward and try different techniques and experiment with different things. But for right now, we're just slapping paint down. We're slapping paint down and we're not worrying about it. Trying to make sure I get some on those little gloves. These areas are definitely not going to be covered super well enough. And that's okay. Yeah, you can see that that's kind of thin out there. I'm going to try to get some behind his head. A bunch on this pauldron with the horn here. A little bit on the hand. And there's a lot of things that we're going to be painting over. And since we're layering colors over this, we're going to be able to hide a lot of the early mistakes we make, which is great. That's what we want. I'm putting a little bit more paint on this area that was very thin. And a bunch of these areas are thin, but that one hand was particularly thin. Okay. You know what? First pass, that's good enough. Okay, we're almost done with this first coat. Let's get it going for this next guy. I love the little guys that they stuck on the base for this. All of these guys have little Nurglings or little flies, other gross little buddies. And the TM little guys are some of the best. Genuinely love them. I debated not putting them on the bases so that I could hoard them and use them for something else later, like for a Necromunda thing, or, you know, make a Mordheim Chaos Warband with a bunch of little Nurglings and stuff. A bunch of different possibilities we could do there. Okay, so once again, getting the backpack, getting under the arms, getting these little shoulder pads. That was a little thick for the shoulder pad there. I'm actually going to get a little bit of water, and I'm just going to kind of run that across my model a bit. And then I'm going to just start painting other areas that don't have paint right now and try to wick a little bit of that off because I went a little heavy there. And again, it's okay. We're not going to worry too much. This guy's little lump at the top of his backpack I'm painting. I don't feel like I need to, but I don't know. Maybe I'll change it up. Maybe some of these backpacks will be set like that and some won't. Okay. Let's get this guy off. Let's clean my brush. All right, base coat for the last guy. Let's get him going here. Oh. Again, I went a little heavy on that, so I'm going to get another dip of water. And I'm just going to very quickly kind of spread it around. So this is probably the messiest one I've done. This one we're probably going to go over again. That's okay. Just kind of spreading things around. This brush is already kind of destroyed, because otherwise I wouldn't recommend being that aggressive with the brush. That's okay. So now I'm going to try to get a little bit more paint. I'm still trying to aim for that smoother consistency. And I'm just going to gently touch these areas again. Try to reapply on some of these areas where it's basically still black with just a little bit of a green tint, because I was a little heavy-handed earlier. Okay. And just a little bit here. Now the good thing about doing it this way is by the time you finish doing like your squad, because I do tend to paint like, you know, small groups of models, like, you know, 5 to 10 at a time, especially if they all have a very similar color scheme, like the same unit or the same markings or whatever. I like to paint them all together because it just saves you time. You do this step, and then by the time you've done this one step for everybody, that first model you started on is good to go for the next.